Hey there. Tonight we're going to step back in time and dive into one of the toughest challenges humanity has ever faced. Arctic exploration in the 1800s. Imagine setting out into a frozen world of endless ice, bone-chilling cold, and near-constant darkness, with only the barest supplies and your own grit to keep you alive. It wasn't just a test of physical endurance, but a battle against isolation, hunger, and the unforgiving forces of nature. In this series, we'll explore why so many early explorers struggled, and why you probably wouldn't last long in those brutal conditions. From battling frostbite and starvation, to navigating treacherous ice floes and enduring months of darkness, life on an Arctic expedition was nothing like the adventurous stories you might have heard. We'll uncover what it really took to survive, the tools and gear that sometimes helped and often failed, and the mental strength required to face such extremes. So get ready for an eye-opening journey into the frozen north, where every day was a fight for survival and every step could mean disaster. Let us begin and find out why life in the 1800s Arctic was a challenge few could conquer. You stand on the creaking wooden deck of your ship, staring out across a stark, endless white horizon. The cold air bites at your face like tiny needles, and the sharp wind slices through every layer of clothing you wear. Before you lies the Arctic, one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, a vast frozen wilderness of ice, snow, and bitter cold stretching as far as your eyes can see. It is a place that has fascinated and terrified explorers for centuries. The 1800s, in particular, were a pivotal era in Arctic exploration. During this time, brave men like you were sent into the unknown, risking everything in search of discovery, national glory, and sometimes simply survival. You aren't just venturing into a cold place. You are stepping into a realm where the natural world reigns supreme and human control is tenuous at best. The Arctic is unlike any other environment. Its landscape is ever-changing, a shifting sea of ice floes and frozen plains that can trap your ship or force you to abandon it altogether. The relentless cold tests your body in ways you've never imagined, threatening frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion. The sun behaves oddly here, disappearing for long, dark months and then returning in a dazzling, endless day that can play tricks on your sense of time. Back in the 19th century, the Arctic was largely a blank spot on maps. What little was known came from scattered reports, indigenous knowledge, and a handful of earlier voyages. Many believed the North Pole to be the gateway to undiscovered lands or vital trade routes, especially the famed Northwest Passages sea route that promised to connect the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, saving months on long voyages. Governments, adventurers, and scientists were all eager to claim a piece of the Arctic's mystery, each hoping to be the first to reach new frontiers. You quickly learn that these expeditions are far more complex than simply sailing north. The Arctic's frozen seas are treacherous. Ice can build and shift with little warning, threatening to crush your ship or trap it in an unmovable prison of frost. Your vessel, often a wooden ship reinforced with extra planking, can become locked in ice for months or even years. The famous Franklin expedition, for example, set out with great expectations only to become icebound and lost. You are painfully aware that once trapped, the chances of rescue are slim. The technology of the era, though advanced for its time, is still crude compared to what modern explorers enjoy. You rely on compass, sextant, and rudimentary maps that offer little detail. Navigation depends on clear skies and careful observation, but the Arctic's weather is often brutal thick fog, snowstorms, and the constant presence of ice-obscure landmarks. Even the stars you once used to guide your path can be hidden behind endless clouds or the long polar night. Food and supplies become a constant worry. You know that your ship's hold carries only limited provisions, often salted meats, hard biscuits, and dried peas, all of which grow monotonous and unappetizing as the months drag on. Fresh food is scarce, leading to nutritional deficiencies like scurvy. Hunting wildlife is difficult and unreliable in such a barren landscape, especially when the temperatures plummet and the ice stretches endlessly. You ration your food carefully, but hunger is an ever-present shadow. The mental and emotional challenges compound your physical struggles. Days blend into weeks and months with little change in scenery. Isolation from the rest of the world can feel suffocating. The long polar night weeks or months without sunlight wears down even the strongest spirits. You watch as your crewmates battle loneliness, fear, and despair. In such an environment, morale can be as fragile as the ice beneath your feet. Life aboard your ship is cramped and tense. The cold pushes you and your comrades into close quarters, where tempers flare and patience wears thin. You must rely on your crew for survival. Trust and teamwork are your only defenses against the Arctic's cruelty. The hierarchy aboard is strict, with officers issuing orders that can mean the difference between life and death. Yet even the best discipline cannot erase the fear that gnaws at the edges of your mind. Despite these harsh realities, the Arctic holds a strange allure. The prospect of discovery, the chance to chart unknown lands, to find the fabled Northwest Passage, or to simply survive where few have drives you forward. You study the behavior of the ice, the migration patterns of polar bears and seals, and the changing weather. You learn to read the signs of nature, understanding that success depends on respecting the environment rather than conquering it. The 1800s saw many famous expeditions, from John Franklin's doomed journey to Elisha Kane's searches, and from the ambitious attempts of Sir John Ross to the scientific voyages of Fridtjof Nansen at the century's close. These voyages combined exploration, science, and human drama, revealing both the limits of technology and the indomitable will of the men who dared to venture north. The Arctic is not just a place of ice and snow, it is a crucible that tests every aspect of human endurance. You realize that to survive here, you need more than physical strength. You need resilience, resourcefulness, and an unwavering spirit. Every day presents new challenges, from shifting ice to dwindling supplies to the endless battle against the cold. You come to understand that Arctic exploration in the 19th century was more than a quest for glory. It was a harsh lesson in humility. It exposed the limits of human knowledge and the need for adaptation. Many expeditions failed, but each failure brought new understanding, helping pave the way for safer journeys in the future. As you prepare to venture further into this frozen frontier, you grasp that the Arctic is a world unlike any other. It demands respect, courage, and endurance. Few would last long here, but those who did left a legacy that continues to inspire explorers today. Imagine yourself preparing for a journey unlike any you've ever known. Before you lies the daunting task of packing for an Arctic expedition in the 1800s of May, mission that could stretch for months or years into the icy unknown. You must decide what to bring with you on this perilous adventure, knowing full well that every item could mean the difference between survival and failure. You rely on woolen garments, thick leather boots, and fur-lined coats. Many explorers use sealskin or reindeer hide boots lined with fur, but shoes are also a common source of trouble. Without waterproofing and proper insulation, your feet become wet, numb, and vulnerable. Wood is scarce in the Arctic, so you rely on coal or whale oil, which are also needed for heating your ship and cooking. You carry knives, axes, saws, and ice picks, essential for cutting through ice, hunting, and building shelters. You also bring navigation tools, compass, sextant, chronometer, but these can become unreliable near the magnetic poles or during storms. Without accurate navigation, you risk becoming hopelessly lost in the featureless ice. Conserving fuel means you often have to choose between warmth and hydration, an impossible balancing act. These tents must withstand fierce Arctic winds and hold in heat. Leather stiffens and cracks. Metal tools freeze and become brittle. Fabric becomes soaked with moisture, it freezes solid, and matches become useless when damp. Early Arctic expeditions often brought European-style boots and coats ill-suited to the polar environment. Indigenous Arctic peoples, by contrast, used fur and skins expertly tailored to the climate. When fuel ran low, temperatures inside the ship plummeted, and dehydration or hypothermia risk increased. You were forced to make hard choices, rationing heat or water, often with painful consequences. Every piece of gear, every ration, every layer of clothing mattered. And accepting that, no matter how well you prepare, the Arctic will always have the final say. Too little, and you risked frostbite, starvation, or getting lost. Too much, and you slowed yourself down, exhausting precious energy. The Arctic demanded the best preparation and constant vigilance. Some explorers learned from them, adopting their clothing and hunting methods, which improved their chances of survival. But others resisted such knowledge, sticking to familiar European gear that left them exposed. You constantly have to care for and repair your equipment, but wear and tear is inevitable. You might imagine that salted meat and hard biscuits are enough to keep a man alive, but the lack of fresh nutrients led to scurvy, a disease that sapped strength and morale. Even when lime juice was included, it was often stored improperly or ran out before the end of the expedition. Over time, they developed better gear, learned to rely on indigenous knowledge, and improved their supply lists. New fabrics, improved tents, and better navigation tools emerged late in the century. Sled dogs were trained to help carry loads, reducing the burden on men. Yet, even with these advances, packing for the Arctic remained a complex life-or-death challenge. Hunting local wildlife, like seals and polar bears, was sometimes possible, but difficult, and required skills many sailors lacked. Yet many explorers underestimated how quickly fabric would freeze stiff and crack, or how difficult it would be to set up camp on hard, uneven ice. But prove essential: needles and thread for repairs, extra rope, matches for fire starting, and writing materials to document your journey. Yet many expeditions failed because they overlooked small necessities or didn't bring enough spares. The blisters and frostbite that result can cripple you, making travel slow or impossible. These clothes are bulky and heavy, often restricting movement, but they're your only defense against frostbite and hypothermia. You also pack mittens, wool socks, and hats with ear flaps. Yet, even with these layers, the cold finds its way in. What you bring must be balanced against the limited space on your ship and the weight you can carry during land treks. You must prioritize items that offer the most protection, utility, and nourishment. But every choice comes with trade-offs. Bringing too much food means less room for fuel or warm clothing. Carrying extra tools can slow you down or exhaust your energy. However, knowledge of Arctic-specific ailments like frostbite or scurvy is limited, and treatments are often ineffective. Many relied on bleeding or other outdated remedies, which sometimes worsened their condition. Moisture from sweat and melting snow seeps through, freezing against your skin and increasing your risk of injury. Yet despite careful planning, there's always something forgotten or underestimated. This section will take you through the gear and supplies typical for such an expedition, and reveal how those choices shape the lives of explorers. Your preparations begin months before you even board the ship. You and your fellow crew members gather the essentials: heavy clothing, tools, food, and medical supplies. But the Arctic is unforgiving, and packing for it is a puzzle with no perfect solution. First on your list is clothing, the armor against the cold that can drop to -40 degrees or lower. Fresh food is impossible to store for months, so you rely heavily on salted meat, hardtack biscuits, dried peas, and pemmican, a dense mixture of fat and protein. These foods are calorie-rich but monotonous and often unappetizing. You must eat to survive, not for enjoyment. Still, malnutrition and scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C, are constant threats. Many expeditions brought lime juice or preserved fruits, but these supplies often ran out or spoiled. Footwear is critical. You need sturdy boots capable of withstanding cold, wet ice, and rough terrain. Next, you must pack food challenge all on its own. Water is another critical concern. Ice and snow are plentiful, but melting them requires fuel. Tools and equipment fill your pack next. Shelter is vital. While your ship provides some protection, you also pack tents made of canvas or reindeer skin for use during land expeditions. Medical supplies are basic but indispensable. You carry bandages, poultices, and primitive medicines like opium for pain relief. Among your supplies are everyday items that might seem trivial. Despite your best efforts, packing for the Arctic involves many unknowns. The cold environment itself plays tricks on your gear. One of the biggest mistakes many explorers made was underestimating the importance of proper insulation and waterproofing. Without it, even the best clothing failed. Food was another area where mistakes cost lives. Fuel shortages were common and often disastrous. Heating the ship and melting ice for water required constant fires, but wood was scarce and coal or oil supplies limited. Despite all these challenges, explorers adapted. In the end, the success or failure of an expedition often hinged on how well you packed for the impossible. As you shoulder your pack and prepare to step into this frozen wilderness, you realize that packing isn't just about what you bring. It's about understanding the environment, respecting its dangers. You wake to the biting sting of cold seeping through every layer of your clothing, invading even your bones. It is a constant, merciless presence that defines life in the Arctic. Your breath becomes a cloud of frost, and the air itself feels like shards of ice sliding against your skin. Every movement requires effort because the cold stiffens your muscles and numbs your fingers and toes. Simple tasks become monumental challenges when your hands lose feeling or your feet threaten to freeze. You feel sluggish, confused, and drowsy, a dangerous combination in a place where alertness is critical. You find yourself thinking more slowly, struggling to make decisions. You bundle yourself in furs and blankets, but the chill seeps through, keeping you on edge. Rest is vital, yet difficult to achieve. Fatigue lowers your body's ability to generate heat, creating a vicious cycle. Sleep deprivation weakens you physically and mentally, further diminishing your chances of survival. Mood swings, irritability, and despair creep in as the cold erodes your will. You learn to regulate your activity, carefully working hard enough to keep warm, but avoiding sweating. This balance is delicate and often difficult to maintain. Your skin becomes dry, cracked, and irritated by the cold and constant friction of heavy clothing. Lice and other pests become unwelcome companions, adding to your discomfort. You must fight to maintain morale, not only your own, but also that of your crewmates. Your skin thickens and toughens. You learn to recognize early signs of frostbite and hypothermia. You become more efficient in your movements and protective measures. Still, the cold never truly becomes friendly. It remains a constant battle. Physical labor takes on new meaning. Even the simplest task is harder and more exhausting. You quickly learn that conserving energy and staying warm are paramount, and that any misstep can have immediate consequences. The cold causes blood vessels in your extremities to constrict, reducing blood flow. The crystal clarity of the air, the brilliant reflections on ice, and the deep silence that blankets the land all remind you of the power and purity of this place. The cold is harsh and unforgiving, but it commands respect and demands your full attention. You feel the cold pressing in from all sides, a physical weight that seems to suck warmth from your very soul. Each day is a negotiation with the cold, sometimes a victory, sometimes a defeat. To survive, you must be vigilant, adaptable, and resilient. The Arctic cold spares no one, but it also reveals the strength and limits of human endurance. It is in these moments that the mental battle is fiercest. You focus on small comforts, a warm cup of broth, a shared story, or the steady rhythm of a comrade's breathing to keep despair at bay. In close quarters with crewmates, tempers flare more easily when discomfort is shared, but privacy is scarce. You rely on each other for warmth, help with dressing or tending wounds, and for moral support. Group unity can be the thin line between survival and disaster. This not only risks frostbite, but also causes aching pain and stiffness. Indigenous Arctic peoples have mastered ways to survive extreme cold through specialized clothing, diet, and shelter techniques. You understand that the Arctic's chill is not just a backdrop, but an active force you must constantly manage. Many expeditions benefited from their knowledge, adopting fur-lined boots, layering methods, and hunting strategies. You see how vital this wisdom is, especially when your own equipment falls short. Once warmed, circulation returns with a painful throbbing sensation. You become acutely aware of every limb, watching for signs of damage or injury. The isolation and monotony of frozen landscapes compound the mental toll, making hope a scarce commodity. You struggle to keep dexterity, often fumbling with essential equipment. Frost-covered ropes and metal tools freeze hard, requiring extra effort to use. Your breath fogs your vision, and icy winds reduce visibility, increasing the risk of accidents. Every step demands caution. Mistakes in the Arctic can be fatal, so you learn to be deliberate and patient. The cold makes you want to rest, but rest risks letting your body's temperature fall further. Many explorers fell victim to this invisible killer. Here, temperatures plunge far below anything you've known often, reaching -40 degrees or colder. Blood rushes away from your extremities toward your core to preserve vital organs. Your skin tightens, your heart pounds faster to circulate warmth, and you shiver uncontrollably. Shivering is both a blessing and a curse. It generates heat, but it drains your energy and makes focusing difficult. The cold saps your strength and patience, and the longer you are exposed, the greater the toll. The cold is more than just an environmental condition. It is a relentless adversary that tests your body, mind, and spirit at every turn. From the moment you step off the ship or emerge from your tent, the cold attacks. Your body reacts instinctively. Frostbite is a constant threat. Your ears, nose, cheeks, fingers, and toes are vulnerable first. At first, the skin feels numb and hard. You may notice it turning pale or waxy. If untreated, frostbite can lead to permanent tissue damage or loss of fingers and toes. You become acutely aware of the importance of protecting these parts, but when cold winds cut through your clothing or wetness freezes against your skin, protection is often inadequate. Hypothermia lurks beneath the surface. When your core temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius, your body's systems begin to fail. Mental strain from the cold is just as serious. The relentless freeze dulls your senses. Your sleep is interrupted and fitful. Even in a tent or below deck, the cold creeps in. Surprisingly, heat can become a problem too. Overdressing during physical exertion causes sweating, and wet clothing in Arctic temperatures freezes quickly, increasing the risk of frostbite. Your body's circulation suffers. Numbness dulls your hands, making basic tasks like tying knots, handling tools, or lighting a fire perilous. The cold changes how you interact with your surroundings. The ice and snow become treacherous underfoot. Hygiene is nearly impossible to maintain in such conditions. Water freezes quickly, and washing is rare. Despite all this, you discover that your body adapts in small ways. The cold also tests your social bonds. You also learn to respect the environment and those who live there permanently. The cold shapes your every decision, from how you dress and move, to when you rest and eat, to how you plan routes and campsites. At night, when the darkness is complete and the temperature drops even further, you huddle close to the fire or seek shelter in the ship's hold or tent. The cold shapes the rhythm of life itself. Days are punctuated by the need to warm clothing, melt snow, and maintain fires. Yet, despite the hardship, there is a strange beauty in the Arctic cold. Your body, mind, and spirit are tested beyond anything you've known. As you prepare for your Arctic expedition, you quickly learn that food is more than just nourishment. It is a lifeline, a constant concern, and a challenge that shadows every step of your journey. In the frozen expanse of the 19th century Arctic, access to fresh food is impossible for much of the year. Hardtack, a dense, dry biscuit made from flour and water, forms the backbone of your diet. It is tough and tasteless, often described as ship's biscuit or toothbreaker, but it won't spoil. You learn quickly how to soften it by soaking it in whatever liquid is available, whether that's coffee, tea, or broth. It is dense and fatty, often described as an acquired taste, but when hunger gnaws at you, it becomes a precious commodity. Fresh fruits and vegetables are absent from your diet, as they cannot survive the long Arctic winter or storage. However, hunting is dangerous and requires skill. Ice conditions, weather, and limited weapons make the task difficult. When you do manage to catch fish, the freshness is welcome, but preservation becomes a challenge. You must consume what you can quickly, or try to salt and dry the catch, risking spoilage. When successful, fresh meat provides not just calories, but some relief from the monotonous preserved diet. Melted ice or snow is your main source, but melting requires fuel, which is scarce. You are forced to calculate calories carefully, balancing the need for energy against the risk of running out of food. Overeating early in the expedition might give momentary satisfaction, but could doom you in the long term. You learn to measure portions precisely and to conserve even crumbs. Food breaks are brief and functional, often taken in freezing conditions. You learn to eat quickly, sometimes shivering as you chew. When the wind howls outside, the warmth from hot broth or a morsel of pemmican becomes a small comfort. Cooking is a delicate balance. Too little heat leaves food tough and unpalatable. Too much risks wasting precious fuel. Your strength and spirit hinge on what you can put into your body, even when it feels insufficient. Food becomes a symbol of hope, a tangible sign that life continues despite the merciless cold. You and your companions find yourself scavenging every bit of edible material, reluctant to discard anything. Meals become a chore rather than a pleasure. The lack of variety and flavor wears down your spirit. When combined with the cold, malnutrition is a deadly duo. You notice how lack of food saps your motivation, and exhaustion becomes nearly constant. Appetite waxes and wanes, and periods of hunger become normal. Still, you cling to the hope of fresh game or resupply. When fresh meat arrives, it is a cause for celebration, a rare feast in an otherwise grim diet. Some explorers resort to desperate measures, eating leather or bark when supplies run out, measures that offer no real nutrition and only damage your digestive system. You find yourself dreaming of fresh bread, vegetables, or even a simple hot stew. When food runs low, arguments and desperation grow. The limited, often unappetizing diet, combined with the threats of starvation and malnutrition, create a constant battle. Success depends not only on the provisions you bring, but on your ability to adapt. Ration carefully, and seize every opportunity to supplement your diet with fresh game or fish. You realize that starvation is not just about physical hunger, but mental survival. Sometimes meals are eaten cold or only partially cooked, which can lead to digestive troubles. Around the fire or stove, meals are an anchor in the frozen wilderness, a brief respite from the endless cold and isolation. Without enough water, dehydration can worsen fatigue and make digestion of tough rations more difficult. Yet even hunting has its limits, and reliance on it is uncertain. Some expeditions bring preserved lemon or lime juice to combat scurvy, but these supplies are limited and often lost to spoilage or poor storage. You notice that crewmates who lack access to fresh sources of vitamin C develop symptoms. bleeding gums, weakness, and lethargy. Scurvy not only weakens the body, but damages morale, creating despair in the already harsh environment. The fat content is especially important because it provides the concentrated calories needed to generate body heat in the cold. Despite your best efforts, hardtack remains a monotonous staple necessary, but far from satisfying. You must rely on preserved rations, stored carefully before departure, and the slim hope of hunting or fishing along the way. What you eat or fail to eat will have a profound impact on your ability to endure the cold and the hardships ahead. Your provisions consist mostly of non-perishable foods designed to last for months, even years. Salted and dried meats are another mainstay. Beef, pork, and sometimes fish are heavily salted to prevent spoilage. The smell of these preserved meats can be overpowering, and the taste can be dry and leathery. Like hardtack, they require preparation and cooking challenging when fuel is scarce and temperatures are low. You may find yourself boiling them repeatedly, extracting every bit of nourishment possible. Even so, the diet is limited in variety, making it difficult to get all the nutrients you need. You often tire of the sameness. But these rations provide vital protein and calories necessary to fuel your daily exertions in the freezing cold. Beans and peas are packed as dried legumes, supplying essential carbohydrates and some protein. Pemmican, a mixture of dried meat, fat, and sometimes berries, is prized for its high energy content and long shelf life. Despite these provisions, scurvy, the disease caused by vitamin C deficiency, looms as a silent killer. To supplement your diet, hunting becomes essential. Seals, polar bears, and Arctic birds provide fresh meat when available. Fishing offers another possibility, but ice-covered waters and limited daylight hours restrict access. Water is a constant challenge tied closely to your food supply. The preparation of meals is labor-intensive. You often stand over small fires or stoves, melting snow and boiling your rations in pots. The psychological effect of this limited, repetitive diet cannot be underestimated. Rationing becomes a daily concern. Commanders impose strict limits on how much each man can eat. Despite rationing, spoilage and waste are problems. Salted meat might be too tough to eat. Biscuits can become infested with insects, and improper storage can ruin supplies. Hunger weakens you physically, slowing your movements and lowering your body temperature. The monotony and hardship of the Arctic diet shape your daily routine. Over time, your body adapts to scarcity, conserving energy but also becoming vulnerable to illness. The importance of food extends beyond physical survival. It becomes a social bond, a moment to share stories and maintain camaraderie. Ultimately, food and rations are among the harshest tests of your endurance. You learn that in the Arctic, eating is about survival more than pleasure, a daily negotiation with scarcity and the environment. Every step you take in the Arctic carries a hidden danger, a threat that could end your journey long before your supplies run out, or the cold overwhelms your spirit. Frostbite and cold injuries are relentless enemies, striking without warning and threatening your very ability to move. Your toes, fingers, ears, and nose are the first to suffer, because blood circulation retreats to your vital organs to protect your core temperature. This prioritization means that your limbs receive less warm blood, leaving them vulnerable to freezing temperatures. The pain isn't immediate. It often starts as numbness, a dull tingling, or a strange prickling sensation. You might not realize how serious the damage is until it's too late. Numbness or discoloration in your toes or fingers triggers immediate action. Warming, changing wet socks, and adjusting your clothing layers. Preventive care becomes part of your routine, but the harsh environment often thwarts your efforts. Sometimes you wake in the middle of the night to painful tingling in your toes, a reminder that the cold works even while you sleep. In an environment where mobility means survival, losing the use of your feet or fingers is a crisis with consequences that ripple through every aspect of life on an expedition. Instead, you use body heat placing frozen fingers under your armpits or pressing toes against your thighs. When possible, you avoid walking on frozen feet, knowing that pressure on damaged tissue worsens injury. They teach you the importance of changing wet clothes, elevating injured limbs, and avoiding unnecessary exposure. Sudden weather changes, unexpected snowdrifts, or broken equipment can leave you stranded or exposed longer than planned. You learn to care for your gear, meticulously drying boots near fires, patching cracks, and rotating gloves to prevent exposure. You know that without your ability to walk and balance on treacherous ice, your survival chances plummet. You guard your mobility fiercely, adjusting your pace, resting when needed, and listening to your body's warnings. Indigenous Arctic peoples have developed clothing, footgear, and movement techniques that reduce frostbite risk. You watch how they layer, how their boots fit snugly but allow circulation, and how they avoid long exposures. Frozen feet and frostbite might seem like distant dangers until they strike. When they do, the consequences reach far beyond pain. They threaten your very ability to move forward, to explore, and to live. Learning from them can mean the difference between frostbite and safe passage. When gear fails, you face days or weeks with compromised protection. You feel the cold seep deeper, creeping into places you thought safe. When frostbite strikes, it is a race against time and environment. The strongest expeditions are those where vigilance and teamwork keep frostbite at bay. The loss of grip strength complicates essential duties like building shelter, cooking, or navigating the ice. Every task slows down, increasing exposure time and fatigue. These grim outcomes highlight the stakes. Each injury reduces the group's strength and resources, making every member's health critical to the entire team's survival. But in the Arctic, rest is a luxury. The journey often demands movement, even when your body protests. Your mobility, your ability to contribute, and your chance of survival depend on your vigilance, preparation, and quick response. From the moment you set foot on the ice, the biting cold targets your extremities. This recovery phase can last weeks, during which your mobility is severely impaired. Every step hurts, and simple tasks become agonizing. You rely on your crewmates for assistance, which can strain the group's resources and morale. Walking across the ice or snow becomes a calculated risk. Each step presses frozen surfaces, while icy winds whip relentlessly at your exposed skin. Without antibiotics, infections can spiral, causing further tissue damage or systemic illness. Preventing infections means keeping wounds clean and dry, an almost impossible task in the damp, cold environment. The sensation fades to numbness, and you may even lose all feeling in the affected areas. Knowing that a misstep or delayed care can cause permanent damage weighs heavily on your mind. Fear of losing toes or fingers adds stress, which can cloud judgment and increase accidents. You struggle to balance caution with the need to push forward. Trench foot, caused by prolonged exposure to wet, cold conditions without freezing, leads to swelling, numbness, and infection risk. These conditions might not be immediately disabling, but gradually erode your strength and mobility. If you ignore these warning signs, deeper layers of skin and muscle suffer irreversible damage. In extreme cases, the tissue dies and may eventually require amputation. For an explorer in the Arctic, losing toes or fingers means losing balance, dexterity, and the ability to perform crucial tasks. Your boots, no matter how insulated, cannot guarantee total protection. Moisture from sweat or melted snow seeps in, and once wet, fabric and leather lose much of their insulating power. Wet feet freeze faster, making the risk of frostbite even more severe. Frostbite develops in stages. At first, your skin turns pale and hard as ice crystals form in the tissues beneath. Cold injuries are not limited to frostbite. Chilblains, for example, cause painful inflammation from repeated exposure to cold and dampness, often worsening with each thaw and refreeze cycle. You become hyper-aware of your body's signals. Warming frostbitten areas is delicate. Rapid warming with hot water is dangerous, as it can cause tissue shock. The pain after thawing frostbite is intense. Once blood flow returns, you experience burning, swelling, and blistering. Injuries to fingers are particularly problematic. Handling ropes, tools, and weapons becomes nearly impossible with numb or swollen hands. You also face the risk of infection. Damaged skin barriers open pathways for bacteria, which multiply rapidly in harsh conditions. The mental toll of frostbite and cold injuries is profound. You watch how experienced explorers manage these threats. They check each other daily, sharing knowledge about early signs and effective prevention. But even the best precautions sometimes fail. The cold also affects your boots and gloves. Leather stiffens and cracks, losing flexibility. Fur linings flatten, can lose insulating properties. Despite all the risks, your feet are your foundation. In extreme cases, explorers with severe frostbite were forced to abandon expeditions or be left behind. You also understand how cultural knowledge and local expertise help. Ultimately, frostbite and cold injuries are more than physical ailments. They are constant reminders of the Arctic ice power and unforgiving nature. Each day you battle the cold, not just with fire and clothing, but with awareness and respect.
You quickly learn that the Arctic isn't a static, frozen wasteland. It's a living, shifting maze of ice, snow, and treacherous terrain that changes beneath your feet. Every step you take is a negotiation with the landscape itself. The seemingly endless white horizon is deceiving. It hides cracks, crevasses, ice flows, and unstable snowfields ready to swallow the unwary. Climbing these ridges requires strength and caution, as a slip could mean injury or worse. These ridges often block your path, forcing long detours that sap your energy and morale. Moving across this landscape without modern tools like GPS or reliable maps feels like wandering through a dangerous puzzle. The Arctic Ocean isn't a single sheet of ice. It's made of countless large flows that drift independently. These leads can appear suddenly and widen quickly. You have to time your crossings perfectly, sometimes using makeshift bridges of snow or logs. You and your companions develop signals and routines to communicate hazards silently and quickly. Speed increases risk, but lingering too long in one place wastes precious time and fuel. Each day's route is a careful balance of pushing forward and avoiding hazards. Ahead of the group, scouts probe the ice, marking safe paths and warning of danger. Crossing leads is new. The water below is freezing, and falling in could mean almost certain death. Without these, your chances of slipping, falling, or becoming lost increase dramatically. Walking across the ice means moving carefully between these drifting plates. Your life depends on constant awareness and readiness to adapt. You watch how ice cracks, listen to its groans, and watch for signs of change. The ice tests you physically and mentally. It humbles you and shapes you. Those who master it gain not only survival, but a deeper understanding of this extraordinary world. You become part of a delicate dance with the environment. Navigating it is a constant challenge, demanding vigilance, patience, and respect. Every journey across this shifting maze is a story of endurance, caution, and the fragile balance between human determination and nature's raw power. A misstep can leave you stranded on a small, unstable floe that might break apart or drift away from the main group. Without GPS or radios, you rely on celestial navigation using the sun, stars, and horizon, but weather often hides these guides. The endless white, the crystalline patterns of frozen water, and the stark contrast of deep blue leads create a surreal environment. You find moments of awe amidst the hardship, a reminder of the vastness and power of nature. You carry sextants and chronometers, but using them requires skill and clear skies. These deep cracks, often hidden beneath thin layers of snow, can be dozens of feet deep. You learn to watch for subtle signs, a slight depression in the snow, a faint difference in color or texture. Crossing these areas demands rope teams and careful probing. But even then, accidents happen. Falling into a crevasse could trap you in freezing darkness with little chance of rescue. Sudden storms can reduce visibility to near zero, forcing you to stop and huddle for hours or days. Crossing them means searching for snow bridges thin, snow-covered gaps spanning the cracks. The bridges look solid but can collapse under your weight. You use ropes and probing poles, inching forward with a mixture of fear and determination. The cold intensifies, and the ice becomes slicker, making every step precarious. Darkness hides dangers, and cold intensifies. You rely on lanterns and each other's presence to stay safe, but fatigue and cold can cloud judgment. The mental strain of navigating such terrain under these conditions weighs heavily. Wind-driven snow scours your face and freezes exposed skin, compounding the physical toll. You have to rely on your instincts, careful observation, and experience to avoid disasters. One wrong move can send you tumbling into a hidden crevasse or stranded on a breaking ice floe. The ice is never uniform. In some areas, it's thick and solid, seemingly permanent. But elsewhere, it's thin and brittle, cracked by shifting tides and freezing temperatures. You find yourself constantly testing the ground with poles or ice axes, trying to discern if it will hold your weight. Sometimes the ice groans and shifts beneath you, a reminder that the environment is alive and unforgiving. The terrain includes pressure ridges where ice sheets collide and buckle, creating jagged walls of ice that tower over you. Crevasses are among the most feared dangers. Snowfields pose their own challenges. Fresh snow can hide dangerous holes or unstable ice below. Whiteouts when snow and sky blend into an endless gray can disorient you, wiping away all sense of direction. Without landmarks, you'll depend on compasses and celestial navigation. But clouds often obscure the sun and stars, making these tools unreliable. You also confront the ever-present risk of ice floes breaking away. The constant movement of ice creates dangerous, leads narrow channels of open water between flows. Traveling over this landscape requires not only physical endurance, but constant vigilance. Your pace is slow and deliberate. Weather adds another layer of danger. Navigating crevassed glaciers presents special challenges. These giant rivers of ice flow slowly downhill, creating vast crevasse fields. When crossing glaciers or sea ice at night, your vulnerability spikes. You begin to understand the importance of preparation, wearing crampons for traction, carrying ice axes for balance, and learning to read the landscape become vital skills. The terrain teaches you humility. No matter how strong or experienced you are, the Arctic demands respect. Your journey also highlights the limits of your technology. Maps might be outdated or inaccurate. Compasses can be unreliable near the magnetic pole. Despite the danger, the ice landscape has a strange beauty. You realize that every successful step across this maze is a triumph of knowledge, skill, and sheer will. In the end, the Arctic ice is both a barrier and a path.
In the unforgiving Arctic landscape, shelter is not a mere convenience. It is your lifeline. The bitter cold, relentless winds, and endless snow make finding or creating a safe haven essential to survival. Each night without adequate protection is a gamble against frostbite, hypothermia, and exhaustion. You quickly learn that building and maintaining shelter in this brutal environment demands resourcefulness, patience, and constant vigilance. Each piece must fit snugly, sealing gaps that would let in the biting wind. The interior is smooth and curved, designed to reflect your body heat back toward you. You stack snow outside to act as insulation, pack the floor with layers of dried moss or animal skins, and huddle close with your companions. Fires are rare inside shelters due to the risk of smoke and fire, so body heat becomes your main source of warmth. Every breath you exhale, every shared blanket, every movement adds to the fragile heat you guard jealously. Melting snow near a fire, or with body heat, provides essential drinking water, but moisture can freeze quickly on walls and bedding, making your surroundings damp and cold. You take care to keep your clothes and sleeping gear dry, knowing that wetness invites frostbite and illness. A small ventilation hole at the top allows fresh air in without letting warmth escape. You help each other reinforce walls, clear snow, and adjust ventilation. These shelters are less comfortable and more dangerous, but can buy you time in emergencies. Morale fluctuates as the storm rages, but the shared effort to protect the camp binds you together. Snow and ice track mud and debris inside, threatening to freeze and cause discomfort. You set routines for tidying the space and managing waste, understanding that hygiene, while difficult, affects health. Layers of wool, fur, and leather act as insulation, and you know that even the best shelter won't to protect you if your garments are damp or torn. You regularly dry and repair your clothes, using fires outside the shelter to avoid smoke inhalation. You clear snow drifts daily, chipping away at the icy buildup. It is fragile yet vital. A successful camp is a testament to your resilience, knowledge, and cooperation. Without it, the Arctic's dangers multiply exponentially. The small holes you create for air exchange must be monitored and kept open, even as snow tries to clog them. You check these holes constantly, feeling the air and listening for strange sounds that might signal danger. The cold seeps in through any crack, so you patch gaps with snow or ice, or even frozen moss gathered from beneath the ice. It becomes a sanctuary from the harshness outside, a place where you can rest, gather your strength, and share moments of warmth and conversation. The shelter offers not just physical protection, but mental refuge, critical in a landscape that otherwise feels endless and isolating. A collapsed wall or a broken vent can turn your refuge into a death trap. You learn to build the shelter quickly, sometimes under falling snow or howling winds. Shelter in the snow is the frontline defense against the Arctic's unyielding cold, a shield you build with sweat, skill, and determination. Every night spent safely within your camp is a victory. Every sunrise, a new chance to push onward. When the decision comes to set camp, the first challenge is finding the right spot. When driftwood or other solid materials are available, you might construct lean-tos or tents reinforced with ice blocks. You lie close to one another, using your combined body heat to stave off the cold. Blankets, furs, or animal skins are precious commodities, layered to trap warmth. You find that even the smallest draft chills the bones, and you constantly adjust your position, balancing the need for warmth with the discomfort of cramped quarters. Canvas or animal skins stretched over wooden frames provide some protection, but these require constant repair against the tearing wind and abrasive snow. You brace against the roar of the wind, listening as the ice groans and the snow piles up. You know that the slightest structural failure could mean exposure to the Arctic night's lethal cold. You scan the horizon for a place shielded from the wind, preferably behind a natural barrier like a ridge or ice formation. The igloo or snow house is a common choice. It may look simple, but the engineering behind it is remarkable. You cut blocks of dense snow and stack them in a spiral, creating a dome that traps warmth inside. It's a delicate balance. Too thin, and the structure collapses. Too thick, and it takes too long to build. A flat, stable surface is ideal, but such places are scarce amid the jagged ice and snowdrifts. Sometimes you must settle for less than perfect terrain, knowing the shelter you build will have to compensate for nature's shortcomings. Constructing a shelter out here means using whatever primitive materials are at hand: snow, ice blocks, driftwood, and sometimes canvas or sails salvaged from your ship or sled. Building the igloo is exhausting work. You wield saws or knives to shape the blocks precisely, but snow shelters are only one option. Inside your shelter, you make every effort to create warmth. Maintaining the camp is a constant battle. Snow accumulates rapidly, threatening to bury your shelter or block exits. Ventilation is a critical concern. You know that without fresh air, carbon dioxide buildup inside a sealed shelter can be deadly. Water inside the shelter is both a blessing and a curse. Sleeping arrangements are dictated by survival needs, not comfort. Storms present the greatest threat to your shelter. Gale force winds and blizzards can last for days, battering your walls and threatening to collapse your shelter. In these moments, your skills and teamwork are crucial. You also learn to improvise when your shelter fails. Sometimes you dig snow caves or trenches to shield from the wind, using snow as a natural barrier. Your clothing plays a vital role in sheltering yourself from the cold. As the days stretch on, the importance of maintaining a clean and organized camp becomes clear. The psychological impact of your shelter cannot be overstated. In the vast, silent Arctic, your shelter is your only link to security and normalcy. You grow to respect the shelter as a living entity requiring constant attention, adjustment, and care. In the end, your survival depends as much on your ability to create and maintain shelter as on your physical endurance or navigation skills. In the relentless Arctic cold, your clothing isn't just something you wear, it is the difference between life and death. You quickly learn that what you put on your body must serve as armor against the brutal elements. Bone-chilling winds, freezing temperatures, and biting snow. Clothing choices can make or break your survival chances, and every layer, material, and seam matters. In the 1800s, explorers often relied on wool and fur natural materials that provided warmth even when damp. Wool's ability to retain heat when wet made it a staple, but it can be heavy and slow to dry. Heavy wool coats and tight leather boots look sturdy, but struggle to manage moisture and restrict movement. Each garment must be carefully layered and adjusted to prevent gaps where cold air can sneak in. A fur-lined hood, a woolen balaclava, and sometimes a face mask help shield against frostbite. But even the best face coverings can't block every icy gust. Your cheeks and nose sting, and you become hyper-aware of the cold's assault on exposed skin. Seams and fastenings must be sealed tightly, but not so much that circulation is cut off. Gloves are layered to balance warmth and dexterity, too bulky, and you can't grip tools. Too thin and your fingers freeze. Many explorers use tightly woven fabrics or additional outer shells to block the wind. However, these layers must breathe, or trapped moisture turns to ice inside your clothing. Some hats have ear flaps or face coverings. You balance protection with visibility and hearing, knowing that sensory awareness is vital in the harsh environment. You notice your fingers go numb despite gloves. Your breath frosts inside your hood, and your body aches from the chill. You become acutely aware of the fine line between warmth and hypothermia. You learn to recognize early warning signs, such as shivering, confusion, or slowed movements, and act quickly to add layers or seek shelter. Without proper clothing, your body succumbs quickly. With it, you gain the strength to face the ice, snow, and wind. But clothing alone is not enough constant care. Adjustment and vigilance are essential. You rotate pairs when possible and use various insoles or wrappings to improve insulation. It embodies the delicate balance between human ingenuity and nature's unyielding cold. Your survival depends on your ability to master this balance, to respect the power of the Arctic, and to dress yourself accordingly. You find ways to adapt, creating signals or routines to overcome the limitations. Every morning, you dress carefully, knowing that the choices you make could save your life. You become intimately familiar with the textures, weights, and smells of your gear. You learn to appreciate the subtle differences between materials and styles, understanding that survival depends not only on willpower, but on the science and art of clothing. You also share knowledge about best clothing practices and gear among your group. You adapt by using toggles or simple ties instead of complex fasteners. You also learn to store your clothes carefully, keeping them dry and protected from snow and ice buildup. Frozen toes are a constant worry, and cold feet can lead quickly to frostbite, as you already know. You feel your boots become stiff and cold, your gloves lose dexterity, and your coats weigh you down. Every misstep in choosing or maintaining clothing costs you precious warmth. You learn to regulate your activity to avoid overheating, removing or loosening layers during intense labor and adding them back during rest. Drying wet clothes is a high priority. Damp mittens or socks mean cold hands and feet come nightfall. Gloves allow more dexterity but expose more skin to cold. A torn glove or boot, a ripped seam or damp fabric can quickly lead to cold injuries. Repair skills become essential. You carry needles, sinew, and patches to fix gear on the go. Improvised solutions, wrapping cloths, stuffing fur into gaps, or fashioning new fastenings can make a difference between warmth and danger. Some explorers try combining the two, wearing thin gloves inside mittens. You test different combinations to find the balance that lets you work while keeping your fingers alive. Fur, especially from Arctic animals like reindeer or seal, is lighter and offers excellent insulation thanks to its hollow hairs and dense underfur. At the start, you might assume thick, heavy clothing is best, but the Arctic demands more nuance. The principle of layering becomes your guiding rule. Their garments are crafted specifically for the environment, using animal skins and furs sewn with sinew to create flexible, windproof, and waterproof outfits. These clothes are often made in layers too, with soft fur against the skin and tougher pelts outside. Their boots, called mokluks, are lightweight and insulated, allowing for mobility and protection. You wear multiple layers that trap warm air close to your skin while allowing moisture to escape. The base layer must wick sweat away. Dampness is your enemy, as wet fabric loses its insulating power and accelerates heat loss. The middle layers provide insulation, trapping air, and the outer layer shields you from wind, snow, and water. Your first obstacle is finding or making clothing that can withstand these conditions. You learn to respect indigenous Arctic peoples for their mastery of clothing design. In contrast, the European-style clothing you bring is often ill-suited for the Arctic. The process of dressing becomes a critical ritual. You can't just throw on a coat and step outside. You learn to protect your face and head, the most exposed parts of your body. Moisture management is a constant battle. When you sweat during hard work or exertion, damp clothes rapidly cool your body once you slow down. Your boots are a particular challenge. Leather tends to stiffen and crack in the cold, while fur-lined boots can become wet inside from melting snow or sweat. Gloves and mittens pose their own dilemma. Mittens trap more heat, but reduce finger mobility. Clothing failures are often disastrous. Windproofing is critical. You discover that even the warmest layer is useless if wind cuts through. The cold also affects your clothing's durability. Fabrics stiffen, buttons freeze, and zippers can jam. Your headgear requires special attention. A thick fur hat is essential to prevent heat loss, as a significant amount of body heat escapes through the scalp. Even with the best clothing, extreme cold sometimes overwhelms you. Your clothing also influences your social interactions and morale. Heavy, cumbersome layers restrict movement and communication, making teamwork harder. Throughout your journey, your clothing becomes your closest ally and your biggest challenge. You realize that the Arctic tests not just your endurance, but your preparation and adaptability. In the end, clothing is more than protection. It is a tool, a strategy, and a lifeline. The Arctic is not just a battle against cold and ice. It is a relentless test of your mind. As you spend month after month in this frozen wasteland, you come to realize that the psychological challenges can be as brutal as the physical ones. The endless snowfields stretch to the horizon, broken only by jagged ice and distant mountains. No bustling towns, no friendly faces, just you and a small crew trapped in this harsh environment. The silence can be deafening. You begin to notice every sound, the creaking of the ice, the howl of the wind, the faint groan of your ship settling into the frozen sea. These become your background noise, the soundtrack to your daily life. The inability to express your fears or frustrations compounds the mental strain. On one hand, it offers escape from the harsh realities. On the other, restless nights filled with nightmares, anxiety, and cold make rest elusive. You wake often, shivering, only to find the darkness and silence waiting. The absence of normal day-night cycles disrupts your internal clock, leaving you disoriented and fatigued. You find yourself questioning your purpose, the decisions that led you here, and your chances of survival. The cold gnaws at your body, but despair gnaws deeper at your soul. Even when rescued or returned to civilization, you carry the scars of isolation and despair. Nightmares and anxiety may haunt you, and simple pleasures like sunlight or warmth feel more precious than ever. You come to understand that surviving the Arctic is not just about enduring the cold, but mastering the mind's endless battles. You notice your appetite waning, your movements slowing, your motivation draining away. The ability to endure loneliness, monotony, and fear shapes your chances as much as your gear or skills. The Arctic tests every fiber of your being, pushing you to the edge. But it also reveals the depths of human strength and spirit, showing that even in the harshest conditions, hope can endure. The monotony and stress weaken your immune system, making you more vulnerable to illness. You realize that mental endurance is just as critical as physical strength. Isolation, boredom, and despair are constant companions, gnawing at your resolve and threatening to break your spirit long before your body gives out. Others keep journals, writing letters they never send, or drawing maps and sketches to maintain a sense of purpose. Storytelling becomes a vital pastime, as sharing tales of home or adventure rekindles camaraderie and hope. Letters from home are rare and delayed, if they arrive at all. Small irritations grow into conflicts, and tempers flare easily. You see the strain in your crewmates' eyes, the exhaustion, the fear, the frustration. Arguments over trivial matters threaten to divide the group, yet cooperation is essential. These moments remind you that life persists, and that your efforts matter. You learn to find meaning in survival itself, in enduring the daily challenges with courage and determination. You learn to mask your emotions, choosing diplomacy or silence over confrontation. The only people you see are your fellow crew members, confined to cramped quarters or small campsites. Over time, even their faces begin to blur in your mind, and the monotony of their presence adds to the weight of solitude. From the moment you leave the relative comfort of civilization, you enter a world of silence and vastness. Days stretch endlessly, filled with repetitive tasks, maintaining equipment, gathering firewood, preparing meals, and scanning the horizon for any sign of progress. You try to keep busy, but the sameness of each day blurs together. The sun barely rises in winter, casting long shadows and plunging the land into darkness for weeks on end. You spend hours huddled inside, staring at the same walls, or out at the icy wasteland, wondering if rescue or relief will ever come. The isolation is profound. You are cut off from family, friends, and news of the outside world. Boredom sets in quickly. Your mind searches for distractions, but options are limited. Books and games are scarce and often shared among the crew. You develop routines and rituals to structure your days, but these only mask the creeping feeling of despair. Conversations dwindle as everyone retreats inward, conserving energy and hope. Loneliness weighs heavily on you. Even surrounded by others, you feel profoundly alone. Sleep becomes a double-edged sword. The confined quarters amplify tensions. the mental toll manifests physically. To combat despair, you develop coping strategies. Some turn to religion or superstition, finding comfort in rituals or prayers. You cling to small victories, repairing a broken tool, spotting a break in the ice, hearing a distant bird's call. The Arctic's psychological impact lingers long after you leave. In the end, your mental resilience is your most vital tool. In the Arctic, where the landscape is a vast, frozen desert and modern transportation is non-existent, your lifeline is often a team of sled dogs. These animals are more than just companions. They are essential partners in your survival, your connection to the outside world, and your best chance of navigating the harsh, icy terrain. You quickly realize that without dogs and sleds, travel across the Arctic is nearly impossible. They are fierce, loyal, and tireless animals bred for endurance and strength. Training is ongoing, as the Arctic conditions demand constant adaptation. The dogs need regular exercise to stay fit, but overworking them risks injury or exhaustion. Every extra pound slows the dogs and drains their energy, so you carry only what you absolutely need. The dogs can cover many miles in a day, far faster than walking, and in a more controlled and predictable way. Still, the journey is not without peril. Thin ice, hidden crevasses, and sudden storms test your navigation and the dog's instincts. You rely on the lead dogs to sense danger and adjust course accordingly. The dogs determine your pace as much as the weather or the ice conditions. Their energy ebbs and flows, and you learn to read their signals. The sled becomes a mobile lifeboat, your home, storehouse, and emergency refuge all in one. You provide raw meat, fat, and sometimes fish, but food supplies are limited, and rationing is necessary. They are your engines, your guides, your guards. The morning harnessing, the steady pull across the ice, the midday breaks, and the evening care create a cycle that structures your life in this otherwise unchanging landscape. Their playful energy and loyalty provide comfort when the vast white wilderness feels isolating. They become your connection to life, movement, and warmth in a frozen world. This rhythm becomes a source of stability amid the Arctic's unpredictability. You adapt your behavior, schedule, and mindset around their needs and abilities. You learn humility, respect, and a deep sense of partnership. They are your lifeline on ice, the means by which you traverse distances, carry supplies, and endure the brutal environment. The bond you forge is a testament to human and animal cooperation, a partnership forged in ice and hardship. Together, you navigate the frozen frontier, step by step, mile by mile, toward survival and discovery. Without them, the Arctic's frozen expanse becomes an insurmountable barrier. Their keen senses alert you to changes in weather or the presence of predators. When the wind howls and visibility drops to nothing, their calm presence provides reassurance. At night, their warmth is a comfort against the Arctic cold. The dog's health directly impacts the success of your expedition, so you watch for signs of illness, frostbite, or injury. Each dog has a role. Lead dogs set the pace and direction, while wheel dogs near the sled provide power to pull heavy loads. In case of injury or sudden storms, the sled provides shelter, and the dogs can help pull you to safety. You respect their expertise, learning how to care for the dogs, build harnesses, and read the signs of the land. Their ability to traverse terrain inaccessible to humans makes them invaluable for rescue or supply runs. You must understand their behavior, recognize signs of fatigue or injury, and maintain their health with the same care you give yourself. The terrain is deceptive and treacherous. Miles of uneven ice, deep snowdrifts, jagged ice ridges, and frozen seas that shift and crack beneath your feet. Walking alone with heavy gear is exhausting and slow. Horses or wheeled vehicles are useless in such a frozen environment. But a dog sled team can glide across the ice, pulling heavy loads swiftly and efficiently. You face heartbreaking moments, when a dog becomes too weak to continue, when illness strikes, or when the harsh environment takes its toll. These moments remind you of the fragile balance between survival and loss in the Arctic. Crafted from lightweight wood and reinforced with rawhide bindings, it is designed to glide over snow and ice with minimal friction. The runners are polished smooth to reduce drag, and the sled's construction balances durability with flexibility to absorb shocks from rough terrain. Your relationship with the dogs is complex and deeply practical. Managing the dogs requires skill and patience. You learn to harness and hitch them correctly, communicate through commands, and work with their natural instincts. The sled itself is an engineering marvel. Loading the sled is an art. You must pack supplies carefully, balancing weight to avoid tipping while ensuring essentials like food, fuel, and tools are accessible. Traveling by dog sled transforms your perception of distance and time. Feeding and caring for the dogs is a daily ritual. Their diet must be rich in calories to fuel their relentless activity in freezing temperatures. The bond you form with the dogs is profound. They become your trusted companions and protectors. Sled dogs also influence your route choices. You plan your journey around their stamina and the terrain's demands, seeking rest points where the dogs can recover and feed. Beyond transportation, sled dogs serve as emergency lifelines. The cultural significance of sled dogs also becomes clear. Indigenous Arctic peoples have lived and traveled with dogs for centuries, developing traditions and knowledge passed through generations. Despite their toughness, the dogs are vulnerable to the Arctic's hardships. Your dependency on dogs shapes every aspect of your expedition. Traveling with sled dogs also brings a rhythm to your days. In moments of solitude, the presence of the dogs alleviates loneliness. Ultimately, the success of your Arctic journey depends heavily on these remarkable animals. Mastering the use of sled dogs and maintaining their health is a skill you carry with respect and gratitude.
Navigating Arctic waters is a test unlike any other. The ocean here is a constantly shifting maze of icepack, floes, ridges, and towering ice. Bergs that you must read and respect or face deadly consequences. You quickly learn that sailing through these frozen seas demands a mix of skill, experience, and luck. With the knowledge that one wrong move could trap your ship in ice, leaving you stranded in the most unforgiving environment on Earth. As you approach the Arctic, the landscape of the ocean changes dramatically. The deep blue of open water gives way to an expanse of white and grainless sheets of ice stretching to the horizon. You watch as the ice shifts and grinds against the hull, threatening to break it apart. Supplies are finite, and your chances depend on rescue or escape routes opening. Sometimes, you use explosives or tools to free the hull. In other cases, you try to maneuver the ship using sails or rudders, but the ice often has the final say. You face bitter cold, storms, and isolation, confined to the cramped, freezing ship. You and your crew develop routines to maintain hope and sanity, but the uncertainty is always present. The ice can be both your captor and your enemy. You understand that the Arctic Ocean is a place where man est will meets nature. Indifferent, and only those who adapt, endure, and respect the ice stand a chance. You learn to read the ice, its color, texture, and movement. All give clues. The crew must ration food and fuel carefully, maintain the ship's structure, and keep spirits from collapsing under the weight of fear and uncertainty. Tensions run high, as everyone knows that one bad storm or one failed attempt at escape could be catastrophic. Darker, smoother ice tends to be thinner, while thick white ice with ridges indicates heavy pressure and danger. The ice is an unforgiving landscape, cold, barren, and unpredictable. You face risks of hypothermia, injury, and isolation without the protection of the ship. It is a living force, shifting with the seasons and winds, shaping the fate of explorers and their ships. Many expeditions ended here trapped, abandoned, or lost to the frozen depths, cracks, and groans in the ice worn of movement. You'll find yourself scrambling to gather what you can and evacuate before the ship sinks beneath the ice. This moment is terrifying: dark, freezing water, floating debris, and the chaos of escape. Survival off the shipwreck means relying on makeshift shelters, scarce supplies, and the harsh terrain of the ice itself. At times, you might find thin leads or channels of open water, but these are often narrow and unpredictable. Your ship must weave carefully through these openings, always alert for shifting ice that can close in without warning. Your ship itself becomes a fragile fortress. Wooden hulls are reinforced where possible, but even the strongest vessels can be crushed by the immense pressure of shifting ice. The captain and crew must work together closely. Lookouts scan the horizon and ice flows for safe pass. The ship shudders as slabs of ice press against the hull. The wooden timbers creak and groan under pressure. You braced yourself for the worst, knowing that if the ice tightens enough, the ship could be crushed like a tin can. The crew scrambles to prepare for the possibility of abandoning ship, gathering supplies, and readying lifeboats. Navigators rely on charts, compass readings, and dead reckoning, but maps of the Arctic are often incomplete or inaccurate. You have little margin for error. A single misjudgment can send the ship into a trap of freezing water and crushing ice. When the ice closes in, your world changes instantly. If trapped, your ship becomes a frozen prison. The ice locks you in place, immobilizing the vessel for weeks or months. In these conditions, survival depends on discipline and morale. Attempts to break free are desperate and dangerous. You might send men out onto the ice to chip away at pressure ridges or clear channels. Shipwreck is a constant threat. When the ice crushes the hull, the ship can break apart suddenly. Stranded on the ice, you must establish camps and rely on hunting, fishing, and scavenging to survive. The mental strain is immense, knowing that rescue may never come or could be delayed by months or years weighs heavily on you. Through all this, you learn to respect the power of the Arctic ice. Your survival depends not just on skill or courage, but on humility before the ice's might.
Surviving the Arctic means sharing the land with some of the planet's most formidable wildlife. You quickly learn that this is not a tame wilderness. It's a wild, unpredictable world where animals reign supreme. From the stealthy polar bear to the elusive seal, your encounters with Arctic creatures are fraught with danger and require constant vigilance. Towering and powerful, they are the undisputed rulers of the ice. They can stalk you without warning, blending perfectly with the snowy landscape. When you spot one in the distance, your heart races. You weigh your options. Try to retreat quietly, make yourself look bigger, or prepare to defend yourself. Each choice carries risk. Their presence signals seasonal changes, but they can also bring noise and disturbance when you need quiet. You learn to recognize the calls and patterns of local wildlife, using them as guides to weather and food availability. Securing your supplies becomes a daily challenge. You hang meat high, use noise deterrents, or post guards during vulnerable hours. A startled or hungry bear is unpredictable and extremely dangerous. Watching a polar bear roam the ice or a seal slip into the water reminds you of nature as power and resilience. Yet these moments also remind you that you are a visitor here, vulnerable and dependent on respect for the animal's space. You understand that these animals survive through incredible adaptation and endurance. They are not your enemies, but fellow survivors in a harsh world. If a predator approaches, you must act quickly and decisively. Grouping together and making loud noises can sometimes scare animals away, but this is not guaranteed. The unpredictability of wildlife keeps you on edge. You're aware that polar bears see humans as either prey or competitors. An encounter can turn deadly in moments. Their behaviors, migrations, and interactions become part of your daily experience. You grow attuned to their patterns, using this knowledge to navigate and survive. You prepare first aid kits for wounds and bites, knowing that infection and limited medical supplies could turn a minor injury into a major problem. You realize that mastering survival here means not just battling cold and ice, but learning to coexist with the powerful forces of nature that share this land. You learn to treat wounds quickly and improvise with what you have. You carry weapons and tools for defense, but your best protection is awareness. You constantly scan your surroundings, listen for unusual sounds, and avoid areas where bear activity is known. Out here, wildlife isn't just a curiosity. It can be a serious threat. The vast white landscape might look empty and peaceful, but you are never truly alone. Every step you take is tracked by creatures adapted to survive these harsh conditions. And sometimes, those tracks cross yours in ways you're not prepared for. Polar bears are the most feared among these Arctic giants. Despite their size, polar bears move silently across the ice. However, you must be cautious of wolves or sled dogs that may roam near the edges of the ice. Seals, though smaller and less threatening, are central to the Arctic ecosystem and your survival. They provide a vital food source, but catching them is no easy task. You watch the breathing holes in the ice, waiting patiently for the seal to surface. Hunting seals requires patience, skill, and often a bit of luck. Missing a shot can mean hunger for days. Other animals also share the ice. Arctic foxes, cunning and resourceful, scavenge around campsites looking for scraps. Their presence is a nuisance, but rarely dangerous. Birds like gulls and eider ducks appear in surprising numbers during warmer months. Encounters with wildlife are not just about danger. They are moments of profound connection. Conflicts sometimes arise over resources. You may find your camp raided by curious foxes or threatened by bears drawn to your scent or food stores. The cold, desolate landscape leaves little room to hide or escape. Injuries from wildlife encounters, though rare, can be severe. Your interactions with Arctic wildlife also shape your respect for the environment. Despite the risks, you find moments of awe and wonder in observing these creatures. The Arctic's wildlife is a constant reminder of the wildness beneath the frozen surface. Every encounter teaches you humility and caution. Out here in the vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic, the silence is overwhelming, almost suffocating. It presses down on you from all directions, broken only by the occasional crunch of ice beneath your boots or the distant howl of the wind. It's not just the physical silence you notice. It's the absence of any connection to the world, the absence of voices, news, or even a simple word of comfort. This silence is a constant companion on your expedition, a reminder that you are truly alone. In the 1800s, explorers faced this dead silence with no radios, no telegraphs, no satellites. The lack of external voices or news feeds a growing sense of loneliness and despair. Simple hand signals become critical for silent coordination on deck or while traveling over ice. You develop tap codes, rhythmic patterns of knocks to convey messages when shouting might be drowned out by the wind. Small gestures and shared routines become lifelines, anchoring you to each other and maintaining morale. Without regular communication, fear and uncertainty take root. You watch the frozen horizon day after day, hoping to see sails or smoke signaling another ship. You store extra food, fuel, and medical supplies in case you are stranded longer than expected. You prepare signals designed to maximize visibility, bright flags, stacked stones, fires that can burn even in wet conditions. Coordinating a rescue, managing rationing, or responding to emergencies all require clear, decisive exchanges. Misunderstandings can lead to disaster. You realize that effective communication is as important as physical endurance in surviving this frozen world. To communicate even when the world around you is utterly silent. But often, there is only emptiness. It strips away modern comforts and forces you to rely on the most basic human tools language, trust, and companionship to endure. A carved note on driftwood, a stone cairn marking a path, or scattered supplies hidden in snowbanks tell stories of survival, hope, or tragedy. These relics remind you that you are part of a long chain of humans who dared to confront the Arctic silence. Months or years can pass before relief ships arrive, and sometimes they never do. You come to understand that your fate depends on self-reliance and teamwork, not on hope for outside help. Once you left the relative safety of home ports and ventured into the Arctic, there was no way to communicate with the outside world. Without the ability to communicate over distance, every relationship, every shared word becomes vital. You find yourself speaking more often, recounting stories, sharing fears and hopes to keep the silence at bay. The bonds you forge with your crew become not just social, but essential lifelines. The creaking of the ship's timbers, the crunch of ice underfoot, the distant crack of shifting floes, all become meaningful. You learn to interpret these sounds as signals of changing conditions or danger. At night, in the eerie quiet, these noises can either comfort or terrify. No quick SOS signals, no emergency calls. The technology simply wasn't there. You had to accept the fact that if something went wrong, you and your crew were entirely on your own. Communication between ships or camps depended on old-fashioned, unreliable methods. Flags were used for signaling over short distances, each color or position conveying a specific message. If you were trapped in a shifting ice floe, your ship immobilized for weeks or months, you would have no way to alert others to your plight. No message in a bottle, no smoke column piercing the sky. You might be literally miles from rescue, yet completely unreachable. Smoke signals might be sent during the day, but their visibility depended on weather conditions. At night, flares or lanterns could be raised, but storms, fog, or the endless Arctic night could render these signals useless. Sound signals shouting, bells, or horns carried unevenly across ice and snow. The vast expanse and howling wind often swallowed your cries before they could reach the nearest ear. This inability to communicate across distance caused a chilling sense of isolation. Isolation affected not just practical survival, but also the mental health of you and your crew. The Arctic silence is not peaceful, it's oppressive. To combat this, you learn to communicate within your group in ways that go beyond words. Preparation for emergencies is meticulous. You and your captain draw up plans for rescue attempts, assigning crew members to scouting parties tasked with searching for open water or friendly ships. Rescue missions, however, are rare and dangerous. Other expeditions searching for lost crews must contend with the same brutal environment and unreliable communication. The dead silence also forces you to become hyper-aware of every sound within your immediate surroundings. Even the smallest messages left behind by earlier explorers serve as crucial forms of communication across time and space. Living in this environment makes you acutely aware of the fragility of human connection. In moments of extreme crisis, communication becomes a matter of life and death. Ultimately, the Arctic's dead silence is a powerful reminder of your vulnerability. It humbles you, teaches you respect for the vast unknown. You come to understand that surviving the Arctic is not just about braving the cold or navigating treacherous ice. It's about enduring the profound isolation and finding ways to connect. Standing on the edge of the Arctic ice, you feel the vastness of the frozen world stretching endlessly before you. A place so remote and inhospitable that only the bravest or most desperate would venture here. But despite its brutal conditions, the Arctic beckons explorers with a magnetic pull, a promise of discovery, adventure, and the chance to contribute to humanity's knowledge in ways that few have dared. National pride plays a big role. Empires compete fiercely to be the first to chart unknown waterways, claim new lands, or plant flags on uninhabited ice. You are part of a wave of explorers who believe that knowledge is power, that every new map line, every recorded observation, adds to the sum of human understanding. You are aware that your efforts may save lives in the future by helping sailors avoid hidden dangers or by revealing resources unknown to the wider world. You observe these lights with wonder, recording their movements and intensity while pondering the mysteries behind their glow. These findings may seem small or insignificant in the moment, but they are pieces of a vast puzzle scientists are piecing together to understand how the planet works. The Arctic, despite its harshness, offers moments of breathtaking beauty that remind you why this place captivates the human imagination. Equipment freezes or breaks, scientific observations are disrupted by storms, and the extreme cold dulls senses and slows work. You learn to adapt your methods, improvising repairs, protecting instruments from frost, and finding ways to continue your studies despite exhaustion. You hear stories from other crews about lives lost to cold, starvation, or accidents. Their survival skills, deep understanding of the environment, and resilience often surpass those of foreign explorers. While your goal is discovery and science, you realize that your presence can disrupt fragile ecosystems and ways of life. It is not just charting land or cataloging species. It is a human story of curiosity, courage, failure, and perseverance. You are part of a continuum stretching back to earlier travelers and forward to those who will follow. The discoveries made here reshape how the world sees this icy frontier and your place within it. Your findings will inform maps, books, and eventually modern science. Your journals may serve as guides or warnings to future explorers. The Arctic challenges you not just physically, but intellectually and spiritually. You strive to minimize harm, but recognize that the history of exploration includes exploitation and misunderstanding. It is a pursuit that tests your limits and rewards you with a glimpse into the vastness of our planet's last great wilderness. Some expeditions seek their guidance, learning about hunting, clothing, and shelter. Others, unfortunately, dismiss or misunderstand these local experts. This tension between explorers and indigenous cultures adds complexity to your mission. Many expeditions ended in failure, yet each paved the way for new knowledge. You carry that legacy on your shoulders, motivated to succeed where others have struggled. Knowing how the magnetic compass behaves near the poles improves navigation accuracy. Studying animal migrations informs hunting and survival strategies. You see how knowledge gained in these icy wastes has real immediate value beyond pure science. Scientific inquiry fuels the mission as well, with men of learning eager to study the effects of extreme cold on humans, animals, and the environment. Political powers see strategic value in Arctic passages, imagining shorter trade routes and naval advantages. You quickly realize that your journey is about much more than just survival. Sometimes what you see challenges long-held theories about the Arctic environment. This uncertainty is both frustrating and motivating. You realize that exploration is as much about asking questions as it is about finding answers. It is a quest driven by curiosity, ambition, and a thirst to unlock the secrets of a region that remained largely mysterious to the outside world. You measure the thickness and movement of ice flows, record air and water temperatures, and study weather patterns that seem otherworldly in their extremes. Instruments like barometers and thermometers are precious tools, even if fragile under harsh conditions. Each day you diligently note readings in your logbook, hoping that your data will be valuable for scientists and navigators far away. In the 19th century, the Arctic represented one of the last great frontiers. Unlike other parts of the globe, which had been mapped, settled, or studied extensively, the polar regions were blank spots on the map, filled with legends, myths, and unproven theories. The motives behind your expedition are layered. Your personal motivations also mix with these larger goals. Science itself is at the heart of every day spent in the Arctic. The land and sea here are natural laboratories. The aurora borealis, shimmering in vibrant greens and purples across the night sky, becomes both a spectacular sight and a subject of fascination. You also collect samples rocks, ice cores, and small animals, hoping to learn more about geology, biology, and the fragile Arctic ecosystem. However, discovery in the Arctic rarely comes easily. Every achievement is tempered by hardship. You also confront the limits of human knowledge. Maps from previous expeditions may conflict. Geographic features can shift with the ice and time. Scientific discoveries often intersect with practical needs. Understanding ice conditions helps you and future sailors navigate safely. Despite the focus on research and exploration, you are constantly reminded of the human cost behind these discoveries. You also become aware of the indigenous peoples who have lived in Arctic regions for centuries. Ethically, you grapple with the impact of exploration. In the quiet moments, as you jot notes under the flickering light of an oil lamp, you reflect on what discovery truly means. You come to appreciate that exploration is never a solitary endeavor. Above all, you learn that the Arctic is a place that demands respect for its power, its mysteries, and its inhabitants. In the end, your journey for knowledge is as much about understanding yourself as it is about the frozen land. As you trudge across the endless Arctic expanse, the biting wind tearing at your face and the snow crunching beneath your boots, you cannot help but feel the weight of history pressing down on you. You can almost hear the echoes of past explorers' optimistic voices, proclaiming that with courage and determination, they could conquer the ice. Early explorers brought inadequate clothing, sometimes fashioned from traditional European materials unsuited for polar cold. Explorers learned to use layered furs, reindeer hides, and sealskin clothing to trap warmth. They developed better food preservation methods and carried concentrated, high-calorie foods that could sustain energy through harsh conditions. These adaptations were born from hard experience, often after terrible losses. Leather and wool, while useful in temperate climates, froze and stiffened, losing insulating power. Native Arctic communities had thrived in these harsh environments for generations, mastering survival skills perfectly adapted to the land and climate. Today's explorers benefit from clothing designed to withstand extreme cold, nutrition science, and reliable equipment, all products of hard-learned experience. No matter how advanced your gear or how strong your will, the Arctic's vastness and power dwarf human ambition. Where early expeditions sought conquest and glory, modern explorers often approach the Arctic as stewards, driven by scientific research and a desire to protect fragile ecosystems. The knowledge gained helps inform global conversations about climate change, wildlife preservation, and the impact of human activity on one of the planet's last great wildernesses. The ice will continue to challenge, but thanks to the hard-earned lessons of the past, you face it better prepared with respect, wisdom, and determination. It demands respect, patience, and a willingness to listen to the land, the ice, and even to your own limitations. Drop a comment below to share your thoughts or ask questions. I love hearing what you think. We've seen how the frozen frontier tested every part of your body, mind, and spirit, and how the failures and hard lessons from those early explorers shaped the way we understand and approach the Arctic today. See you in the next video. From battling bitter cold to navigating shifting ice, every moment was a struggle, but also a step forward in human knowledge and resilience. The goal is not to conquer, but to coexist, to understand rather than to dominate. The development of specialized Arctic ships, capable of breaking ice, and the use of sled dogs for transport trace their roots back to these formative years. Each failure was a painful step forward for those who came after. Their knowledge of clothing, hunting, shelter building, and navigation was invaluable. Unfortunately, many early explorers ignored or undervalued this wisdom, choosing instead to rely solely on European techniques ill-suited to the Arctic. The expeditions that incorporated indigenous knowledge fared much better. You realize that respect for and cooperation with local peoples is not just ethical but practical. It is a story of courage and curiosity tested by an environment so harsh it humbled the proudest ambitions. As you push forward across the ice, you carry the legacy of those who came before, those who didn't last, but whose lessons have become the foundation of survival and discovery in the Arctic. The magnetic compass, the primary navigation tool, becomes unreliable near the poles, its needle spinning erratically due to proximity to the magnetic north. Without reliable instruments or accurate maps, ships could easily become trapped in ice or veer dangerously off course. The Arctic environment is unpredictable, and those who clung stubbornly to predetermined routes or timetables often found themselves stranded or caught in deadly situations. Adaptability, being willing to alter plans, find new routes, or change goals in response to changing conditions, became essential. You come to respect the explorers who embraced this flexibility and survived where others perished. You appreciate the value of advances like the marine chronometer, which allowed precise longitude calculations, and the painstaking creation of more detailed Arctic charts from successive voyages. These technological leaps transformed Arctic travel from uncertain guesswork into a calculated science. Boots became soaked and frozen, leading to frostbite and immobility. You witness how isolation, months without sunlight in winter, and the unending bleak landscape can erode morale. The monotony and hardship breed tension among crews, leading to conflict and despair. Leadership, camaraderie, and morale management emerge as crucial survival skills, often as important as physical endurance. You see that successful expeditions are those where crews maintained discipline, supported one another, and fostered hope even in the darkest moments. Food supplies were often poorly planned canned goods, and salted meats were heavy and could spoil or become unpalatable in the freezing cold, while fresh food was scarce or non-existent. Rations ran low, and scurvy and malnutrition stalked the crews. But the Arctic is not a foe to be conquered. It is a force of nature that commands respect and caution. The cold is relentless and merciless. Temperatures plummet to unimaginable lows, and storms can appear without warning, blanketing the land in whiteout conditions that erase all sense of direction. The ice itself is a shifting, dangerous maze. Cracks open suddenly, ice flows separate and drift apart, and hidden crevasses lurk beneath deceptively smooth snow. This vast, frozen wilderness has been both a destination and a graveyard for explorers for centuries. Every patch of ice and every gust of cold wind carries stories of those who came before, men and women filled with hope and ambition, only to be humbled by the raw, unyielding power of the Arctic. Their failures, their hardships, and their sometimes tragic fates are not merely footnotes in history, but essential lessons. Lessons that have shaped the course of Arctic exploration and survival, and that now guide you as you make your own way through the frozen north. One of the clearest reasons so many early expeditions failed was a profound underestimation of the Arctic environment. You come to understand that these conditions were often not fully appreciated before setting out. As you observe your own clothing and supplies, you realize how far technology has come, but also how those first failures forced innovation. Navigation posed another insurmountable challenge to many. Yet, the greatest obstacle was not always physical, but psychological. Rigid planning and inflexibility caused many expeditions to falter. Another vital lesson comes from the relationship between explorers and indigenous peoples. As you record your own observations, you understand how these lessons shape the course of Arctic exploration. But beyond the tangible advancements, the Arctic has taught the greatest lesson of all: humility. You also grasp how the nature of exploration itself has evolved. In the end, the history of Arctic exploration is a testament to human resilience and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. Your journey is part of that continuum, a chapter in the ongoing story of exploration. Thanks for sticking with me on this deep dive into life and survival in the harsh 1800s Arctic expeditions. If you found this journey fascinating, Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future explorations into history as toughest adventures. And if you want more stories like this, check out the playlist linked in the description for other videos exploring the incredible challenges people faced in different times and places. Thanks again for watching. Stay curious, stay adventurous, and remember, sometimes the greatest discoveries come from the hardest journeys.